Hey everybody, it's Jesse, and today I want to show you how I do project management when I'm just doing a project myself, like a side project, or if I'm on a team but I'm maybe the only person that's really doing development. So I'm going to show you how to do this with Trello, because Trello is a free tool. It's very easy to set this up, but you could definitely do the same thing that I'm about to show you with, like GitHub has the same type of functionality now. Azure DevOps does as well, and I'm sure there's other tools out there that do a similar thing. And I've used Azure DevOps and GitHub as well. So I'm going to start with kind of a basic, what they call a Kanban board. And just going to make some cards, take you through the flow that I usually go through when I set up a new project, and then kind of show you how I track things. It's, I guess it's somewhat similar to what you would do on a team that's maybe using Agile, but it's kind of adapted over the years for what I use it for. So the first thing I do is I make some columns. And so I'll have columns. Usually the first one I start out with is to do. And then I make a ready for dev. And in progress. And my next one is testing. And then my final column is completed. And then I started including another column that I just call wish list. And I'll explain what each of these columns are for. So, like your to-do column, you could also call it the backlog, right? And some teams will say this is the backlog. This is just all the stuff that needs to be done in your project. So at first, your to-do column is going to be very big. Anytime you think of something else that needs done in your project, it's probably going to go right in the to-do column. So we'll start filling in some things in that column in a minute. And when ready for dev, the way I handle this is I'll take a period of time. So maybe I'll say like at the beginning of every day or the end of every day, I'll look at my to-do column and I'll look at how much time maybe I'll have for that next time period, whether it's one day or 1 week, and I'll pull over tasks that I think I can complete in that time period. Right? That way I don't have to look at this long list of to-dos. All I look at is what's in here. If you want to compare this to maybe a more traditional like agile methodology, this might be the sprint, right? So ready for dev is what's in this week's sprint or this time period sprint. Okay. In progress is stuff that you're actually working on. You're usually only going to have one or two things in here. The only time you maybe would have more than one thing really is if maybe two things kind of go together. You're working on them at once, or you had to stop one thing and go to another thing for an emergency. I don't know. But most of the time, it's really only going to be one thing in this column. Then once you're done, you move it over to testing. Okay, so this doesn't mean like write automated tests. This means you're going to actually test it manually, or somebody else is going to test it out manually. And then finally, once you've seen that it actually works, you're going to move it over to completed. Right, towards the end of the project, your completed column is going to look very long, and your to-dos not so much. Finally, I added this wish list because as I use this, I realized there were some things that I thought, wow, this would be really nice to have on the project, but it's not really necessary. So I added the wish list column just to put those things in there so that I would remember them and be able to take notes and just show them to people, maybe if there are other people on my team or whatever, and just say like, what do you think about this? As you're working on things, sometimes you come up with ideas, and it's good to just keep track of them. So I keep them here, and then, if I get towards the end of the project and really there's no more to do, sometimes maybe I'll pull over a wish list item. But that's why I added it, and I just keep it off to the side because it's not really something you need to look at every day. But it's good to have a place for it. So the to-dos at the beginning of the project will usually look something like, I don't know, like init. That's short for like initiate. I don't know. I work with React Native a lot now, so I might say initiate React Native project, and then I do this other thing. So I don't know if you're familiar with story points, but it's this idea, and I believe it's connected with agile development, but it's this idea that you want to give some sort of unit of measurement to how complicated you think a task will be. Now, I do mine a little bit differently. I like to work with Pomodoro sessions, so 25-minute periods of time that I work, and then I take a little 5-minute break. So when I give points to something, I'm envisioning each point to be a 25-minute period. Now, this goes against a lot of what the agile methodology says, at least in terms of what I've heard from people, in that it's not supposed to be tied directly to a unit of time. But for me, I've always found it more useful to tie it directly to a unit of time. And as we get a few more tasks in here, I'll show you why I think it's useful, more useful like that. So let's just say I think the project init is going to be, I think it's going to be 2. So I think I can get that done in 2 25-minute sessions, right? And then it actually automatically does this for me because I have this plugin called Scrum for Trello. So there are other plugins that do similar things for Trello. This is just kind of the one I started with years ago, and it works. It's very simple. It doesn't do that much. But what it does do that's very useful is it keeps a running total of up here. And I like that. And so let's say the next thing I might do is like, I don't know, create home page. And let's say I think this is going to be like 3. Now, the numbers aren't completely random. I like to use a Fibonacci sequence. So Fibonacci would be like, it's like a naturally occurring series of numbers that you find in a lot of things in nature. It's even been applied to the stock market and a lot of other things. But you would have a series of numbers that would be like 1, 2, 3, 5. So basically you take the first 2 numbers and add them together to get the next number. So basically like you start with 1. So like 1 is 1, right? And then the second number is 1 plus 1 is 2. The third number would be 2 plus 1 is 3. The next number would be 2 plus 3 is 5. So the next one you'd have 3 plus 5 is 8. I never go higher than 8. The reason being that when you're trying to estimate a task, the larger the task, the harder it is to estimate accurately, which is why Fibonacci is helpful, because if you do start to estimate larger tasks, it forces you to go up several numbers, right? So it almost has a built-in padding that assumes that you're going to estimate wrong. So I try never to go above 8. And if it's something I think is going to be more than 8, I try to break it down into smaller tasks to make it easier to estimate. Right? So this is a type of system that is hard to get right at first when you're estimating, but as the more you use it, the more accurate your estimates will get. Okay, so let me just add a few more tasks. And let's say something like, let's see, set up domain name. Let's say I think that's going to be pretty easy. I'm going to give that a 1. Now, occasionally I have given tasks like a half a point, like a 0.5, if I think it's just going to be so quickly, so fast. So I guess I don't think 0.5 is technically in Fibonacci, but occasionally you do get tasks that are just like fixed typo, right? and you're thinking this is going to take me 5 minutes. So I have done that before in the past, just for the sake of accuracy. I've put it as 0.5. This is actually, I don't need to do a ton of stuff, but what'll happen is, let's say my ready for dev column is, I know, let's say I'm looking at my day, let's say on Monday, and I just want to get the stuff I think I can get done on Monday ready. And I look at my schedule and I say, wow, you know what, Monday, I have meetings all morning Monday, so my whole morning is filled up. So I'm probably not even going to get to code anything until, let's say, like 1 o'clock, right? So after lunch, 1 o'clock, and let's say I think I'm going to be able to work from like 1 to uh, maybe like 1 to 4, and let's say, like, I know I usually get interrupted a few times, so maybe I think I'll only be able to get in maybe 4 Pomodoro sessions, 4 or 5. Uh, let's say I think maybe I'll only be able to get in 5 Pomodoro sessions. Well, then I'm gonna look here and say, well, you know what? I got 4 of these in. Let's see. I think I can do this. I can initialize the project, and I can create the homepage. And that's gonna be my goal. I don't know why I didn't automatically add that. That's weird. There we go. So now I can see, like, all right, I think I can get 5 in. So you see how the estimates now determine how many tasks and which tasks can go into here. Now let's say I get to the end of the day and I think I just have a little bit of time left. I can look in here and very quickly say, all right, this one's a 1. Let's say I had a bunch of cards in here and I say, this one's a 1. All right, let me pull the 1 over real quick. All right, I don't have to think about what tasks are, how long it's going to take. I don't even have to read what the tasks are. I just look at the numbers that I've already given it, and I could say, all right, let's pull this over. I think I can do this. Now, one thing I also do is when it's in progress, as I'm working on it, each time I finish a Pomodoro, I'll go in here and I'll say my consumed points, meaning the points I actually used, I track those as well. So now I have this other little thing, which it's a consumed point of 1. So let's say I actually finish this and it's completed. I can look over here and tell how far off my projections have been. And this will keep track. So I can very easily see, am I, in terms of my original estimates, am I completing things faster than anticipated, or am I slower than I thought? Right? So as long as the bold number is bigger than the non-bold number, like the kind of grayed out number, then I guess I'm ahead of schedule, right? But really the goal should be that you estimate accurately. So now I see that, wow, you know what? I thought this was going to take 2, but now I know it's 1. The next time I go to do this on a project, I should estimate this at a 1. So I can always go back now and have a record of, here's what I thought, here's what it actually was, and now I should be better at estimating, and I could take previous projects and apply whatever I learned about my estimate to the new project. So my estimates are going to be more accurate. The other nice thing about this is, let's say that my boss or the client or somebody says, hey, can you give me some sort of estimate on when this project's going to be done, or when a certain feature is going to be done or something. All I have to do is go over and say, let's say this was all I had on my to-do list. I could say, you know what? It's only going to take like a half hour to be done, right? Because I only have 1 Pomodoro session here, 1 point. I could say too, like on my wish list, if I do the same thing here, I could mention, hey, I really think we should add this feature. I think it would be good. We should, test it out. And say, well, how long would that take? Well, if I estimate and I have my points there, I could very easily go in and just say, okay, it's going to be, 3-4 hours. Maybe it's going to take 2 days. Maybe, but I'll know, right? So that's pretty much how I handle my project management. Now, it's, if you, depending on what tool you're using, you can actually link these cards up to GitHub, like pull requests to your Git repo. So you can have it set up that they automatically, let's say, move into different columns when you merge a pull request or something like that. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. So there is a GitHub plugin for Trello. There's obviously the GitHub Kanban boards are linked up with GitHub pull requests. The same thing with Azure DevOps. You can link things up. So you can add a lot of automation to this. You can you can keep it very simple and manual if you want. This is about as simple as it gets. You may have more columns, so depending on the complexity of your project, maybe you don't have just completed. Maybe you have a like a development server and a prod. So you may have two columns. So your completed might just be like it's in the development server, and then you might have an extra column. It'll say it's in production, meaning like it's completely it's live, right? So definitely, if you decide to do something like this, feel free to switch your columns up, name them how you want to name them. You can add more, take away some if you don't need it. But I found that this has helped me a lot to keep track of things and to fill up a lot of time when, I don't have to think. I could just keep coding. I have my tasks, and I can see just at a glance where I'm at in the project. I found it very helpful. And with Trello and other options that I've mentioned, you can invite people to look at the board. So other developers can also work on this at the same time. You could have your boss or your client be able to see at a glance where you're at. You could put resources in here. So you could potentially have linked up files, right? You could attach files. You could have checklists inside of these cards. There's really a lot that you can do to make this helpful. So hopefully this helps a little bit. It's not exactly, by the book agile, but it's a little variation of this that I think works well if you're on your own or part of a very small team. Let me know what you think. If you all use something similar to this or something different, I'd love to know what you all do to help with your project management. And I especially want to know too, for those of you that have been using Agile, what do you think about the estimates in terms of time versus complexity? Because I've had a hard time with estimating when it comes to complexity, and I found it to be not very useful. But if you have used the complexity metrics and have found it more useful, I'd love to know more about why and how you use it, because I've heard it so many times. There's got to be something to it. I'm just maybe not getting it. So I'd love to know kind of what I'm missing, what that secret is for it. So anyway, hopefully this was helpful, and let me know if there's anything else you want to know about this. I could maybe show you one of my past projects that is a little bit more filled out if you need more info. But I think this is basically the extent of what you need to know for some basic project management for small projects. So until next time, thanks for watching.